I have friends who call me butter chicken.
Mildly offensive.
They'll talk about my dad and they'll be like, oh, we're so excited to meet Mr. Butter Chicken.
That sounds way worse.
That's really bad. That's horrible.
What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I am a 32-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid, but I read them as an adult because I was on a quest to determine if it was a book series that society had been sleeping on. I said yes, and now I'm seeing if society has also been sleeping on the Heroes of Olympus series. And I am joined today by a very special guest, someone who I believe might be young enough to be checking off the Gen Alpha category. Is that correct?
No. Absolutely not.
No, okay. I have no idea
I'm like
generations.
the last year of Gen Z, if you ask people of my age, but like within the last section of Gen Z where we kind of cross into Gen Alpha and we know Gen Alphas pretty well. So I know all the slang that you're confused by. I know most of that.
Perfect. Well, yes, that voice that you're hearing is from our guest, and our guest is a 15-year-old from Norway. It's Niharika Bhattacharya. Niharika,
Yes.
How's it going?
It's going very good. It's going very good. I'm very excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you here. We did a bit of a podcast project for a Percy Jackson thing that you were doing, and it went so well. Yeah, hey, look.
I'm very excited to show it to people, you know, all the kids in my school and tell them, I'm on a famous podcast.
And they'll go, who is this man?
They will. They will. But I will say, you don't need to know. This is my thing.
Beautiful.
I'm happy.
And I'm happy to have you on the show. Now, obviously, I would say that your name doesn't sound traditionally Norwegian, and this is a podcast. No. So I don't even know the answer to this. The listeners obviously don't know the answer to this because they're reading you. But how did you end up in Norway, given that you are of Indian descent?
So I was born in India, and then my dad wanted to go abroad for education, so we moved to France. We lived in Paris for a few years. From Paris, we went to Belgium, actually. We were in Belgium till I was in first grade. Then we moved here. So I've been here since I was in second grade. I basically grew up in Europe, so maybe I'm a global citizen. I'm European, actually.
I like it.
But yes, that's how I ended up in Norway, and I'm pretty happy here, actually. I like it a lot here, and I recommend Norway highly.
I've been a couple of times. I've only been to Oslo and Tromsø, but I had wonderful times in both of those
Did you see the Northern Lights?
I did. I saw the
It's so
Northern Lights when we
beautiful.
went to Tromsø. It was wild. It was very cool. It was fantastic. And then Oslo, I went once just for vacation, and then once when we did Torup for TNO, and the live show was great. And we performed in a place that was part sauna, part beer garden, part restaurant, part live event space. And it was like right on the water by the MUNCH museum. It was deliciously perfect. Yeah.
That's such a good location.
It was a great spot.
It's the new museum, I think. Is it the big one next to the Opera House?
It's whichever one has the scream.
The old one had the scream too, to be fair.
Oh, I think it might be called the new museum. I thought it was the Munch Museum because I kept going Munch the whole time when I was there.
It is, but they rebuilt it. But I think they rebuilt it like a few years ago.
I think yeah, Munch Museum. And there is a website that just says visit Munch in all caps. I thought, so when you said the new museum, there is a museum in New York where the name is the new museum. And I was wondering if there was like someone whose last name is New and they've, paid enough money to own two museums. Gotcha. It is the lowercase n new, all caps Munch Museum.
Yes, it's that museum.
Beautiful. Okay, enough introduction about other things. Let's get into your history with the Percy Jackson books and the Heroes of Olympus books. What is your story with reading those and becoming the fan that you are today?
I mean, as I've told you before, I read Percy Jackson in 6th grade, so a few years back, because I saw it in the library and it looked very mysterious, and I was like, what is this thing, this phenomenon I've been seeing everywhere? So I read it, I decided, wow, I really like this. And then, because we have public libraries here and I don't have easy access to buying English books because everything is Norwegian, I was on the waiting list for The Lost Hero, and the waiting list was 3 months long. Me as an 11-year-old could not wait that long. I was freaking out. I was trying to figure out other ways to read this book. And then my parents bought the box set for Heroes of Olympus for my 12th birthday. And I was the happiest child. That was like one of the best birthday gifts I've ever received. It was amazing. I was so happy. And then I speed ran the whole series. I read it in like a month. I could not stop.
I mean, at that young age, that is very impressive.
I'm an avid reader. I love reading. You can't see like my shelves, but There's a lot on there. I have currently 6 library books borrowed
Ooh,
at once. I might have problems,
nice.
but that's okay.
You know, I think, and I would assume your parents would agree, that if there was a problem for their teenage daughter to get
You'd
into,
think,
and the
though,
problem was
right?
she reads too many books,
You think
that's
though, but
pretty good.
But it's you have studies. Maybe focus on that.
Yeah,
Which is
parents
like,
will
yeah,
always
that's
find a
fair.
way.
But I love reading, and I think that the Heroes of Olympus series is better than the original.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
Not
people
that
that have
like
that
the
belief.
original is bad. It's just that it builds so much on the original, and there's more characters, and
Yeah.
it's just like expanding the universe.
Yeah, it's like when you have any sort of series where a sequel is like potentially an objectively better thing. I make the comparison of Toy Story and Toy Story 2 a lot. Like Toy Story 2 on its own is a better film than Toy Story. It looks better, it's acted better, everything is higher quality, but you can't have Toy Story 2 without Toy Story 1.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard. I like to just not have to pick between them. And I kind of just, especially because I'm doing this as a full podcast where I just keep going and I don't take breaks in between. For me, it's just kind of like all the same thing.
Everything
like
is
it's
just mushed together.
different. Yeah, it's just different flavors within the Riordanverse. It's not necessarily that we have to pick like better sets of series and stuff, but you know, any sort of fandom is going to lead to ranking.
I can't wait for you to get to like Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase and things like that.
It's going to be very interesting when I finish Heroes of Olympus to decide what do I do next. Trials of Apollo feels like the likeliest option just because it continues the story, but I know that Kane Chronicles came out at the same time as Heroes of Olympus, so I'm going release order. That makes more sense.
I read it release order, so I read The Olympians, Heroes of Olympus, and then I read Kane Chronicles, Magnus Chase, and then I read Magnus Chase and Trials of Apollo at the same time. But in all honesty, Trials of Apollo is like a blur to me, and I don't remember anything.
Interesting.
I know that it's called The Trials of Apollo. That's all I remember.
Beautiful.
I have no clue. Nothing.
Well, like years down the road, whenever I get to it, you can reread it and come back on the show and you can be like, oh, wow, yeah, okay, cool, this looks good.
Oh, yes, it happened. It's all coming back.
Anyway, let's get into what we're discussing in this episode. We're going to be talking about chapters 25 and 26 of The Son of Neptune, which are Percy chapters, which are fantastic. Now, where we last left our heroes, we had Frank destroying the basilisks with the help of his new friend, Gray, who he grew from the ground with the tip of his spear. And we resume now with Percy. The opening quote from this chapter is, quote, Percy already felt like the lamest demigod in the history of lame. And usage of the word lame aside, which has become outdated, just the sentiment alone, Percy, come on, man. You're Percy Jackson. I know you don't know that you're Percy Jackson, but you're Percy Jackson.
That was the first sentence I read today, and I was like, I'm disappointed in you. You should know better than this. You're Percy Jackson. You are like the main character. Without you, nothing else exists. You're amazing. Literally, it's not possible.
That's the fun of it, though. And I am excited for when Percy finally realizes who he is, whether that is someone telling him who he is or if he fully gets all of his memories back. Because even Jason at the end of the last book didn't like fully snap back of like, here's everything all at once. So whenever Percy gets back to knowing who he is, it's going to be pretty fun because he's done quite a bit. Now, Percy continues, quote, as the narrator, the purse was the final insult. And I wrote, purse? And then we learn that Iris filled a bag with vitamins and snacks and a bunch of other stuff and gave it to Percy. And then narrator Percy clarifies that it's actually, quote, a masculine accessory bag. Now, this is incredibly 2012 humor of Rick Riordan. Like, this is unbelievably 2011, 2012, whenever this book came out of him, because this was, oh my God, you were alive. But how old are you? You were tiny.
2012?
Yeah.
I was born in 2009, so
oh my
math
God.
tells me that I might have been 3 or 4.
Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, October 2011 is when this book came out.
Oh,
so...
I was born in October of 2009.
Okay, so you're the ripe age of 2. Let me catch you up to speed on what comedy was like in 2011. It was this weird thing of comedy, and I think it might have even been phasing out at this point in time, but it was this thing where like, if a man did anything that wasn't deemed as like stereotypically manly, it was ridiculed. And there was this phrase, at least in America where I grew up, going around called like metrosexual, which meant like you did your hair or like wore a nice shirt that was ironed or like dared to wear the color pink. It was wild. And it was this whole thing where like there would be all these jokes about stuff like that. And this sort of joke isn't necessarily like new to that era, because even Seinfeld had a whole episode, an episode that came out in the 90s about how Jerry had a bag and then it was it's a purse. No, it's a European carry-all. So like, I don't know. This was just like that type of humor.
It's like journal versus diary.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah,
situation.
Journals for boys. Yeah.
Yes, it's not a diary.
I don't have a diary, I have a journal. So, yeah, I think that this is just kind of like of that era. I would assume this level of humor is not around anymore. I've not heard anything like this.
I don't think it's that prevalent. I feel like it does come up once in a while, but I don't think anyone takes it that seriously.
Yeah.
It's not like an insult anymore. It's just like, ha ha ha, it's a bag. You're a guy. Oh, well. And then you kind of move on.
Whatever.
Like, okay.
Which is great.
End of joke. Full stop.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's the way to do it. And I hope that the future continues to be like this, because for Christmas, we got Kelly's sister and Kelly's mom purses. Kind of like a travel purse kind of thing, like a nice, it's technically called a tote, but it's made by like a purse company. So it's like nice. And Kelly's sister has a 4-year-old son. So our nephew loved it. He thought it was so cool. And he started carrying it around with him all over.
That's so cute.
And like, yeah, whatever. None of us stopped him. None of us said anything. No one, and not even the parents, like his grandparents, not even they were like, oh, it's a purse. Like, no, they just like let him have fun with it.
Yes.
And he liked it so much that I believe Kelly's sister went to like get him a smaller kind of bag so that he could have his own, so that she could use the one that we gave her. But like, yeah, it was great. It was just like, who cares if he's a boy? It's a boy. He likes the bag. Let him carry the bag around and puts his toys in it. Why not? Who cares?
Like, it's fine. It does not matter. It doesn't make a difference. It's just a bag.
Matter.
It's for convenience purposes.
Yeah, totally. It's just a bag. It's just a bag. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Now, this bag is rainbow tie-dye with peace signs sewn into it. And it has text on it that says, hug the whole world. Yeah, we need this merchandise. We absolutely need this merchandise.
It's necessary.
It's so crucial. And I would hope that this book series gets adapted into something. And I would hope that when it does, there's merch to go along with it. And they gotta make these. Oh, it would just be such a slam dunk. There's so many things.
So much they can make.
I really hope that they start ramping up the merch department. I know they did a good chunk of merch for season 1 of the show, but like there's so many opportunities for stuff that I would really hope that Disney has some more fun with it, and just like they could even start doing it now. Like I'm pretty sure Disney has the merch rights. Like get on it. There's so many good things to do. So many good things to do. Dare Industries hats, like so many things that we can do.
Or you can do the ripoff versions.
I won't do the ripoff versions because I want to always remain in the good graces of Disney. But I'm sure potentially if you search things on Etsy, you could probably find some things.
I wonder.
Percy takes the bag as commentary that he needs to be coddled, which I think is silly. Now, back in the boat, he tries to put the bag as far out of sight as possible because it reminds him about, 1, him leaving his friends and him not being there to protect them when they got attacked, and 2, that he had a breakdown that just completely wrecked him once he saw the army. So I can get it. I can understand not wanting a visual reminder of something. This is kind of like how whenever I send a text message or a DM or an email to someone that I'm nervous about sending it to, I will send it and then walk as far away from that piece of technology as possible. Flip the phone upside down, close the laptop, whatever.
I don't want to look at it.
Nope. Don't want to check every 30 seconds and just be like, oh, they haven't replied yet. They haven't replied.
Right.
Gmail. No, so I totally get not wanting those visual reminders. Now, Percy also, as the narrator lets us know, that Polybites, the giant, was like the anti-ocean for him. When he's near water, he feels a rush of power within him. When he saw Polybites, it felt like his strength was draining. So I think that's a very interesting development, because we could assume that he's going to have to fight this guy later in the book. And if it feels like his power is draining, that's a very interesting dynamic. So just kind of earmarking that for future run-ins with Polybites.
I honestly forgot Polybites was even in this book this early. I was like, he's already here? What? You're here?
So briefly.
Who are you? I was thinking about it, but Percy's power being drained, I feel like, you know how when Percy's near the ocean, because they're on a boat, it's like you would assume that he's powering up and not down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking right now, and I'm doing like hand gestures, but I can't.
Traditionally don't do well for an audio medium.
It's like opposite forces, kind of like the ocean, Polybites, and Percy's power is like, nope, not today.
Mm-mm.
Absolutely not.
Right. And I guess because he was off of the boat, he could at least go from powered up mode to normal mode, and then seeing Polybites brought him from normal mode to reduced mode.
Oh, okay.
So That's at least one angle. But yeah, maybe that's how he could defeat him. Like, what would happen if he fought him near a body of water? What if it was like every time he fought Kronos, where Kronos idiotically had his headquarters on a boat that had pools and fountains and water all over the place all the time? So yeah, that would be an interesting dynamic. When he fights Polybites, what if he's near the river? That the little Tiber.
I hope
in
Polybites
camp.
is smarter.
I hope he's not smarter. I want him to lose.
That's true. But it's like Kronos, really, your biggest enemy is Percy Jackson, son of the sea god, and you decide, yes, my headquarters? A boat.
Yeah.
In the middle of the ocean with a fountain.
Yeah.
This is gonna go very well.
I hope that I get to do press stuff for the second season of Percy Jackson, because I feel like there's a lot of things in Sea of Monsters I would love to ask the cast about, and I would have a great time just asking Charlie, who plays Luke. I feel like he'd be a good sport about it, and I'd be like, so Luke putting his headquarters on a boat, not the brightest, like...
How do you feel?
Yeah, not great. So Percy, now on the boat, his body is feeling better, but his brain still hurts. He compares it to the phantom limb feeling that amputees have, where you can still feel pain in something that is removed. I've heard of this. I obviously don't have experience with it or know someone with it, but...
I also don't have experience with it, but... You know, like, if you don't have your phone near you and you're on your phone a lot and you go somewhere and you hear, like, phantom buzzes or rings.
Yeah.
Because that happens to me sometimes, and it's like, I don't have my phone on me. What am I looking for?
Yes. What I would recommend to people, if you want to cut down on this, because I used to have this problem happen to me a lot, set like custom text tones that aren't like default ones from Apple or Android or whatever, because then you'll know it's you. And another thing you can do, at least on my iPhone, you can do custom buzz rhythms. This was like an old thing that I did with like my first iPhone way back when I had the iPhone, I want to say 5 or 5S. 5S. Yeah, I know. They started with 1.
Okay, look, I was alive. I was not alive when they started, maybe, but I was alive when the iPhone 6 and 5 existed.
Yeah.
I was there.
I got it in my senior year, so that would have been 2013. You could set like a custom buzz thing. So I have like a rhythm that is like a zzz, which is just like a not common version of one.
This is not something I know of.
Yeah, so if you want to do that, it has made me like less, check stuff, because I know I get a text message if I get like a weird like 3 rhythm thing that I've never heard any other phone have before. So fun fact for anyone trying to be less attached. Another option, just put your phone really far away from you.
That's also true. Do not disturb mode, far away from you.
Literally, my New Year's resolution is to leave my phone. We have like a shoe rack near the door in our apartment, and I'm just leaving my phone on the shoe rack. And I can go over and check it every now and then, but like not just trying to have it in my pocket at all times. It's been nice. It's been nice so far. But it's only January 15th, so let's see how long it lasts.
Yeah.
I hope the whole year.
2
Anyway,
weeks.
Percy Jackson.
That's a pretty good track record.
I'm doing all right. I've made it into week 3. We're getting there. Woo!
Yeah, that's good job. Good job.
So Percy says that his memories are fading the farther north that they get, and it's reversing the progress that he had made at Camp Jupiter, where his memories were feeling stronger and stronger, including the memory of Annabeth's face. So he's very worried. I know. It would be terrible.
It's still crazy to me that he doesn't remember his mom.
Oh.
I get Annabeth. I love Annabeth with all my life. But she's also your girlfriend, and then there's your mom.
Yeah, he hasn't said anything about Sally. That is
because he doesn't remember Sally, as far as I've read so far. He doesn't remember Sally at all.
Yeah.
And he's just like,
right.
I have a girlfriend. I don't know. Her name's Annabeth. And I was like, I love that he loves Annabeth so much, but your mom, Sally, historically one of the best characters in this book series. What about her? Hera really was just like, Annabeth. Sally? No. I could not care less.
Yeah, Hera just choosing chaos by
Seriously.
doing that. But like, she wants the story to be the most interesting. She wants Percy to have, totally. She's scheming.
It's like, there's like a potion and she's like, what memories will Percy remember today?
Right. I always imagine it as doing like a file transfer on a computer. And she's like, this stays, this goes to the trash. Now, Percy tried iris messaging Annabeth at ROFL, which I think is a great move. But Fleecy told him that it wasn't working. She compared it to trying to call someone but forgetting their number. And I really appreciate that Rick continues to think of all the gotchas. And I've wondered this in the past, but I want to know what his process is for catching the gotchas. Someone recently messaged me on Instagram saying that it could be his son or like his kids are his like people to try to check and thwart stuff.
Yeah,
so
maybe.
hopefully one day I can learn, because he's very good about figuring out all of the little things that could be, oh, well, actually. So I'm glad that, he's nipped all of those in the bud before the book gets to publication.
Yeah, it's like closing all the plot holes. Like, no,
He's blocking
no.
them off. He does a great job. Now, Percy's worried that when they get to Alaska, he will forget Annabeth completely. But seeing the army previously put into perspective for him what they're up against and how quickly that they must move, because it's the morning of the 21st and they have to do their 2 tasks and return before the night of the 24th. All the army has to do is march south to camp. So Percy is feeling invigorated to continue on with the quest, and he's just hoping at this point, well, I hope my memories stay, but we got really important stuff to do and we got to do it quickly.
I feel like he's really cutting the deadline close. I don't think they cut the deadline this close usually, and now they have 2 days to go to Alaska, do their stuff, come back. I'm like stressed now.
Yeah, usually they have like a week, and 2 days is quite intense. But I guess like they got such a late start and they don't have to go as far as you have to do in other books. So
I guess.
I agree.
I don't know US geography, honestly.
Well, it's hard because I will be honest, like Alaska is far north, but it's hard because usually when you see a US map, Alaska is in a little rectangle on the side because they just show the US.
Yeah.
But then also it's the confusing thing. I forget the name of the effect, but I only learned about it recently, or it came up recently because unfortunately, our incoming president, he wants to take over Greenland or purchase Greenland.
I was hearing about this the other day.
I hate that you have to also be plagued with this information, but I forget the name of the effect. I'll have to Google it real quick. Oh, the Mercator Projection. So the Mercator Projection, according to Wikipedia, is a conformal cylindrical map projection first presented by Flemish geographer and mapmaker Gerardus Mercator in 1569. So it's basically what we use now as the standard map projection. It does it so that latitude and longitude lines are straight up and down at 90-degree angles.
Oh, okay.
It's really good for sailing because basically you can draw a line directly from one place to another place and then follow that route and then you're good. But what it does is it skews the shapes of how big certain land masses are. So the farther that you are from the equator, the more stretched out something looks. So because Greenland is super far north on maps, and we just continue to use the Mercator projection as standard maps, which we shouldn't because we now have ways to navigate that don't need to be straight lines with latitude and longitude, but it makes Greenland look enormous, and it's not actually that big. And like Russia looks way bigger than it actually is. Even Norway looks bigger than it actually is. So Alaska looks bigger than it is, and then it is north, so it's one of those like, it looks like it's really far away if you're going from California, but like how much of that is stretched? So it's even hard for me to know how far they're actually traveling in this book.
I wonder how big Greenland actually is though now.
Let's see. Greenland actual square footage. Okay, here we go. Greenland is 2.16 million squared kilometers, which is 836,000 square miles. Now let's look up Texas, the thing that we always love to compare because Texas loves to be bigger than stuff. Oh, it is 260,000 square miles, which is about 700,000 square kilometers. So Greenland is 3 times the size of Texas. So it is still big, but it's not like unbelievably gigantic, which a Mercator map
is in Greenland?
Ice. Lots of ice.
It's actually green. It's actually green. There's grass.
Well, I thought, this is one of those things that I've learned. I don't know if it's actually true, if it's just like an idiom thing. I thought Greenland and Iceland, Greenland is the icy one, Iceland is the green one. And there was some like name thing where like they named it Greenland to like trick people to go sailing there thinking that it would be better. I don't know if that's actually true.
I don't know about the Greenland-Iceland thing. I think I've heard about the Greenland naming convention thing.
Okay. What's the Greenland naming convention thing?
No, all I know is that they like named it Greenland so that more people would come there for some
Gotcha.
reason. Or something like that. But I was like, still, what is in Greenland? Like,
I don't know. Maybe I'll do a bonus episode where I deep dive onto Greenland. But to wrap it all up, according to the Mercator projection, Greenland looks bigger than America, or at least like America-sized. And it's actually just 3 times the size of Texas. So still large, but not as big as you would believe. Not as big as Donald Trump thinks it is.
Oh my God.
It's so bad.
I was like in class and we were learning about European imperialism and some kid goes, did you guys know that Donald Trump wants to buy Greenland. Everyone was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
What are you talking about?
If I was a teacher, I would have to forbid all Donald Trump commentary from the class because it'd be too bad. This is like when I did improv comedy in Seattle from 2016 to 2018. I would often host an improv show, a short form show, so you got to get a lot of suggestions from the crowd. And anytime someone said Trump or anything in the Trump universe, I would just go, no, and then ask someone else. Because like, not only do I just not want to hear about it, but like, it's just such low-hanging fruit jokes. It's like not a creative endeavor. He's so easy to make fun of that it's not fun. It's not challenging.
Yeah.
It's not interesting. He's so easy to ridicule.
You'd think that he would not exist outside the American bubble, but I hear about Donald Trump living across the pond.
It's
too much. More than I need to.
It's bad. It's
constantly,
bad.
all the time.
It's bad. When I was living in France, it was when he was running. Like, it was 2015, so he was like in the process, and he was still all over the newspapers. And people asked me like, is this really going to happen? And I was like, no, he'll never actually win. He'll never actually get nominated. And then he got nominated. And I was like, no, he's never going to win. And then he won. Anyway, Percy Jackson, we got to read Percy Jackson. So Hazel and Frank exchange stories about what they did at ROFL while Percy steers the ship. Frank describes the blind seer Phineas that's in Portland and how he might know where Thanatos is. However, Frank does not say how he beat the basilisks. He doesn't reveal that piece of information, but Percy guesses that it has something to do with the fact that the tip of his spear is now broken. So,
oh dear.
Maybe a little obvious there, Frank, but he hasn't explained it yet, and Percy guesses that the reason he hasn't done it is that Frank seems spooked, and he seems more spooked by his spear than he did by the snakes. So Percy gets, okay, his spear clearly did something, but it's scaring him a little bit. We'll worry about this later. Good instinct from Percy. Never wants to have uncomfortable conversations until it's necessary to have them.
Yes.
Hazel explains that she contacted Raina via IM, which I found very interesting. And it wasn't technically an IM, it was through Fleecy's direct number. So instead of doing the, oh, Iris thing, they said, quote, oh, Fleecy, do me a solid, which is so fun and down to earth. And Fleecy's the cool one. I'm fun. You can say a more casual phrase.
Yes.
Now, Hazel notes that Raina was in the baths and was startled when the call started. And Frank says, oh, I would have loved to have seen that, and then immediately recognizes how weird that sounds and clarifies, I mean her facial expression, not the baths.
I went through the same thought process because I was like, wait a second. Closed the book and went, Frank, are you good? Are you okay? And then I opened it and I was like, oh, never mind. He fixes that.
Yeah, Frank just has a hard pivot turn. I would have loved to see that.
That's so scary.
Hazel exclaims, Frank, and then fans herself, which is a great old school thing to do. Percy, as the narrator, notes that it looks very old school, but he also thinks it's quite adorable. Now, in this call to Raina, they told her about the army, but just like Percy, she already knew basically what was up, so it didn't really change her approach. They got to keep building up the defenses, they got to take this seriously, etc. It did just make everyone realize that our trio here has to free Thanatos and get the eagle, because without that, there's no way Camp Jupiter is going to stand up to this army.
My question is, were they having this discussion with Raina while she was still in the bath?
Yeah, or did they give her time to
get
throw
out
out
and
a towel?
everything? Because she's a praetor. Like, she has to be professional. You
right,
can't
yeah.
have that conversation in that situation.
That is wild that for an IM, there's no way to throw it on Do Not Disturb or send to voicemail or do the thing where you send a text.
They didn't know about it, did they?
Like, they didn't know that IMs were a thing. Oh, because
earlier...
Oh, yeah. Iris
I don't know if she's only Greek, but I know that Percy says something about Iris messages, and then Frank and Hazel are like, Iris messages? What's that?
Yeah. I did just Google Roman counterpart to Iris, and it says the Roman god is Arcus. So I guess Iris message, or at least Iris, just more Greek. So yeah, this must be a new concept to them. So to then give Frank more credit, if she has no idea that Iris messages exist, that probably was a really fun reaction. Now, I do hope that she was in a situation where maybe she already had a towel on. Maybe she was like in the, like, I would hope that it wasn't a really bad situation, because that could be really bad. Like, even if you were covered or in a situation where you couldn't see something, if you get so startled, you could jump out of a pool or like, it could be really bad.
Not a very PG-13 situation.
No. We'll see how they handle this in the eventual adaptation, but just a very funny comedic note for Frank. I'm glad he immediately realized how whack that was.
Thank God.
Percy starts thinking, all right, I gotta have allies out here in the world somewhere. They've got to be able to help with this fight. And they're obviously going to. Like, people are going to come to Percy's aid. We're going to see who it is, but like, it's going to be, I don't know who all is coming, but it's going to be fun. So as they sail forth, a humpback whale swims alongside them, and Percy strikes up a mental conversation with it. He asks if it can bring them as close as possible to Portland, and the whale asks, "Are you seals? I eat seals." And then Percy says, "No, we are not seals," but he adds that he has a man satchel full of macrobiotic beef jerky, and the whale says, "If you agree to not feed me this, I will take you to where you want to go." And Percy accepts. Great negotiation.
Yep.
No notes.
10 out of 10 negotiation skills by this killer whale, I think.
Percy makes a rope harness to tie around the whale, and with this setup, the other two convince Percy, "You should get some rest. We're good. Take a nap." And I'm very excited because this means dream time is upon us. He has many dreams, but his first one is that he's on Mount Tam fighting the Titans alongside the Romans, which he knows is wrong. He says, wait, I wasn't there, but he's confusing it. He was there. It's book 3. It's the Titans curse fight, but he doesn't recognize it. So he's seeing when they fought Atlas, and he describes it as them fighting a Titan in armor. Percy is alongside Annabeth and 2 other girls, one of which is slain and then dissolves into stars. So this is our good friend Zoe Nightshade. Gone too
Zoe
soon.
Makes me so sad.
Really, really a tough one. She doesn't
come up often, even after she dies. And then they bring her up here, and I was like, not Zoe, not again. I forgot this happened. And then they like shove it in your face. And they're like, by the way, remember this?
Hey, remember the thing you were sad about, but you forgot about because we don't talk about her that much in the books? You want to be sad again?
On a silver platter.
You want to stare off into the middle distance for 15 seconds before you read the next page?
So sad.
So sad. So then the dream changes, and he dreams of the giant warship that we have seen in visions past in its dry dock. It is complete, masthead and all, but there's smoke coming out from a hatch where there's a boy with curly hair working on it and cursing. Percy then describes 2 other people with him, which are definitely Piper and Jason, but he doesn't know that it's Piper and Jason. And they are stressing because it's the solstice and they must leave today. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, this has got to be like a simultaneous dream situation where this is happening right now. And then I thought, oh, is the Feast of Fortuna after the solstice? And then I realized it must be, because the Feast of Fortuna is on June 24th. The solstice is usually like mid to late June. Like summer solstice 2011, it was June 21st. Oh, wow.
To be fair,
yeah. Okay.
according to Reed Riordan, it's held on the summer solstice, which is weird because the summer solstice is always like June 21st.
Oh, the Feast of Fortuna is supposed to be on the solstice.
It's supposed to be, but if it's simultaneously taking place, then they must have like delayed their celebration because of for whatever reasons. So they were like, oh, it is on this day, and then they're gonna move it, maybe. I don't know.
Interesting. I'll have to see if they continue to go around and talk about the solstice. I'm not like too well versed in the solstice. The most I know about it is I looked up information about it because of the Percy Jackson show, because they referenced the Knicks, and with it being with the summer solstice and everything, it meant that the Knicks were in the NBA finals, which made me absolutely delighted.
I just know the summer solstice is like the winter one is December 21st, because for us the sun sets pretty early in winter, and so December 21st is like the darkest day of the year supposedly. It's always dark here, so there's no difference.
But then when it comes to the summer, do you have the thing where it's like light all the time because you're so far north?
That is further up north. Actually, like midnight sun and stuff would be in Tromsø and things like that. Here, more like Oslo. In the summer, the sun does stay up really late. Like, I remember last summer, it was like 11 p.m. and there was still sunlight. And
yeah, that's pretty late.
Completely lose track of time because you don't know what time of day it is. But then in the winters, the sun is setting at like 2 p.m. and it rose at 9.
Yeah.
There's no light. I go to school in the dark. I come back from school in the dark. It's depressing. It's sad.
You got to get those lamps, the natural sunlight sort of lamps, so you don't get seasonal depression.
It should actually, yeah.
I'm well versed in this because I lived in Seattle, which is like definitely not as intense of a situation as that, but you get the gray for 6 months.
But The solstice is on December 21st, and then the summer should be June 21st. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Whatever is happening here, it seems like it might be the same day. This might be happening in real time, and they're thinking, we gotta move now. So Jason asks how long it'll take to fix the issues, and Leo says 2 to 3 days, which is very convenient, so that they arrive exactly as the battle is underway, and they will show up as it's starting. Like, it's just perfectly lining up, which, you know what? We'll take it. Like, I will never hate the perfect timing element of the Rick books. It's great. No notes. It's so
a book.
Wonderful.
It has to happen.
It's gotta happen
like that.
It's going to be the most dramatic, and we're going to love it. And this only makes me think that Chiron probably messed with the warship. Like, he goes in every day and like cuts some wires to make sure that they can't leave until
Sabotage.
the 24th. Yeah. Piper in the stream, but Percy doesn't know it's Piper. Piper says that they might not have that long. And Percy instinctively feels like the they she is referring to is Camp Jupiter. So that made me very excited, because at first when they were making this warship, I didn't think necessarily that it was to go to Camp Jupiter. I thought the warship was what they were all going to get in to go to Greece in the next book. So the fact that they were going to at least potentially just make a pit stop at Camp Jupiter, save the day, and then be like, get in, losers, we're going shopping, and then go to Greece. That's pretty cool. I never considered this with the warship, but it does work. It is a warship, so hopefully it will be good in a battle at the end of this book. So that had me super stoked.
It would be really bad if they just could not. They had the warship and then they were like, our bad guys is malfunctioning.
Oh yeah, it breaks halfway through. Yeah. Oh, sorry guys. Oh, no, yeah. Now the dream shifts again. This time it's a boy and a dog walking through California, and the descriptions make it quite clear that it's Tyson and Mrs. O'Leary. Now, Tyson is calling out for Percy and calling him brother, which of course narrator Percy finds very interesting. And Tyson comments aloud that Percy smells farther away to Mrs. O'Leary, who barks, and then the scene changes again, this time to a snowy mountain range. And Gia's sleeping face forms in the shadows of these mountains. She beckons for Percy to come north and says that though his friends will die, she will preserve him, quote, for now, which is not good enough. For now? What? No.
She's gonna cryogenically freeze him.
Yeah, this is not good. This is not a good enough deal for me to join your evil side. But she says that she has great plans for him. And narrator Percy describes this valley between the mountains as being covered in ice. And then at the edge, it drops down into the water, to which at first I was like, is this some sort of waterfall? Later, it gets described as what it is, and it made more sense to me. Now, on top of this area of ice is a camp that is similar to Camp Jupiter, where it feels like a war-type camp with barracks and all of that, but it's 3 times the size. And Percy then sees a dark figure shackled to ice outside of the Principia in this place. So that's very clearly Thanatos. And then Percy's vision kind of whooshes through this land and into the building. And inside the Principia, he sees Alcyonius sitting with frozen banners behind him, as well as the Golden Eagle. And he addresses Percy directly, saying that they are expecting him, and in the meantime, his armies will destroy the camps, plural. Big note of plural camps. He says, quote, first the Romans, then the others. So he conveniently doesn't say the Greeks, so that Percy can go, what? But he is revealing that the plan is, all right, we're going to take over Camp Jupiter, and then Camp Half-Blood is next, which, again, I was like, whoa. So, like, these dreams were big in the what's to come department for me.
Everyone is just completely cooked. They're gonna go for both camps and just completely destroy everyone. That's their plan. I was like,
that's their plan.
Please don't do that.
Would love it if you didn't.
Would love it if you just stayed dead. How about that? I wonder what the protocol is like for Gia and Alcyonius.
Mm-hmm. I love your dedication to pronouncing Gia in the whack way that I do it, and then making sure you actually nail Alcyonius for the proper pronunciation. This is the true era of TNO.
It's because you started calling it Gia, and because this is the only Percy Jackson podcast I listen to, and I listen to it pretty often, it's ingrained in my brain.
Yeah, I'm definitely ruining some people.
I read Gaia, but if I say it out loud, I'm like, no, it's Gia now. I don't care what you think, but it's Gia now.
This is my legacy. But look, I got to commit to the bit.
Yeah, I don't even read the names. I see Al, and I see the S, and he's just that, like, Al blank S. There's
Right.
nothing in between.
Totally. I get this. I know people do this with like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, and some people with wacky names, you just kind of go like, oh yeah, it's that person.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I see the letters. They make sense. Well, okay.
I know who the character is. Yeah, we'll just go on. I don't even know if Alcyonius is right. I'll learn in the Dr. Moy episode. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
But I wonder what the protocol is for like their dreams. Is Gia just going through the dreams and is like, Jason, no, not today. Piper, no. Leo, no, I think I'm gonna go Percy in like contacts list. Clicks Percy. Call,
I wonder how it
FaceTime.
works. Because previously we had Morpheus with the dreams in book 5. Is there a Roman version? Is it just kind of like the Chronos Brainlink thing? It's very interesting. I wonder if we'll ever get a description of it, but no matter what it is, it does make the books very fun. And I'm super stoked about what is to come. So Percy wakes and they're in Portland and they're in the river that's in Portland. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been in this part of town before.
I haven't.
There's a river.
Wow.
They name it later. I don't know the name. I think the Willamette. I didn't know that was the name of it, but there's a river that goes through their town. There's bridges that you got to cross and stuff like that. I've visited Portland a couple of times. I've been there like a lot for various things, but not like enough to really like know Portland. But living in Seattle and then like podcast things have taken me there a couple of different times. So they're in the river. It is very lightly misting out, which is incredibly on brand for the Pacific Northwest. Percy asks how they got there, and Frank gives him a, I know this sounds wild look, and explains that the whale passed the harness to a couple of 12-foot sturgeons once they reached the Columbia River. And Percy first imagines doctors, but then he realized, oh, no, he said and meant sturgeons like the fish.
I also read Surgeons the first time.
Now, I think Rick Riordan did this to teach young readers about sturgeons. I think it's a whole, like, you will never forget sturgeons now, and it makes it very clear that it's a fish. And you know, I'll take a little educational lesson in my fun book. Obviously, you're going to go in and learn stuff about mythology, but now you're learning things about animals too. What's not to love?
I don't need school anymore. Just Percy Jackson. I'll learn all my life lessons
there. Look, show this to your parents and just say, look, see, I'm
learning
learning about biology now. I can just read books. It's okay. So now they're in the Willamette River. And once they got to this river, the boat just sort of steered itself. And the other two ask Percy how he slept. He recounts the dreams, but he did leave out the part where Gia said that his friends will die. I think that's valid. And he tries to focus on the positives. A warship may be coming to aid Camp Jupiter, and a Cyclops and a giant dog are looking for him.
Yay.
So, seems like reinforcements are en route.
Hooray.
Yeah.
They won't die.
Maybe not. Yeah. Let's prove her wrong. Now, with regards to the fort on the ice, Hazel identifies that Alcyonius is on a glacier. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because when they're describing it, I was like, what do you mean big sheet of ice that has a large drop-off and water is beneath? And then Hazel said glacier, and I was like, oh, yeah, you've described a glacier. Now, to be fair, I haven't been on a glacier before, but I should at least know.
It's okay.
I felt quite silly for not identifying that right away. But the problem with knowing that Alcyonius is on a glacier is that glaciers are all over the place in Alaska. They're a dime a dozen, so it doesn't really narrow it down. Percy hopes that this seer Phineas can help. The boat then docks itself in a wharf, and then, narrator Percy says, quote, Frank wiped the rain off his flat top hair, and I did not know that Frank had a flat top haircut.
What's a flat top haircut?
It's kind of like military-ish. It's like when your hair is like buzzed on the sides and then it goes up and then it's just like, as the name would suggest, like a flat top
haircut.
There's also a different type of flat top, which is like very cool, but traditionally black men would have this haircut where it just looks more like a pencil eraser. Okay. Black women can also have this haircut too, but it just like more common. You'll see like dudes in the NBA in the 80s have this kind of haircut. So with Frank being Asian, he's probably going to have more of the like military style kind of like spiky-ish one, which is very interesting. I would call this the less cool version of the flat top given the two, but it does give more credence to him being a child of Mars. If I knew, I don't know if I missed the description, but if I knew Frank had a flat top haircut, instantly I would have been like, oh, okay, so child of Mars. Like, no question.
But I think also because Camp Jupiter is very military style, they probably have mandated haircuts.
Oh, interesting. Does everyone have it? Yeah, that could be.
And you know the statue guy, the goofy statue guy.
Terminus?
Yes, him.
Yeah.
He says something about Frank's haircut being very military precise or something like that. He's like, I approve of your haircut.
Yes, you're right. And I think Jason has a buzz cut too. So yeah, maybe even if it's not a requirement at Camp Jupiter, it's the culture. So a
Yeah.
lot of people have it. Oh, yeah. But whether I missed it or didn't pick up on it, flat top haircut, very on brand if you're the son of the war god. So then the final line of this chapter is from Frank after he's wiped the rain off his hair. He says, quote, "So now we find a blind man in the rain. Yay." With no exclamation point. So it's a sarcastic yay. And that's the end of chapter 25, which I have retitled, I Dream of Meanies. Do you have a retitling of chapter 25?
I think maybe I would do a callback to book 1.
Ooh.
I Say Hello to a Killer Whale.
Oh, I like it. That's good. That's good. That's very fun.
I like it too. Thank you.
So now we're going to take our mid-roll break, the Son of Fortune, where we talk about fun updates of the podcast, and then we'll get into our discussion of chapter 26. Hello and welcome to the Son of Fortune Shubio edition for this episode, which is dropping on February 17th, 2025. And February 17th is just a wonderful day, just a magical day to celebrate the birth of everyone's favorite Michael Jordan. That's right. Today's Michael Jordan's birthday. Maybe it's the birthday of another Michael, who's to say, but it's definitely Michael Jordan's birthday. Let's talk about updates with the podcast. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that I'm very excited about. First and foremost, because this episode is coming out on February 17th, 2025, that means we have less than 1 week until our big show in Richmond, Virginia. And I say big show because we sold out the original theater we were booked in. So this venue has multiple theaters. They put us into a bigger room because we sold so many tickets, which I'm very excited about. And now I want to fill that room too. So if you want to go and be a part of this wonderful show, it's going to be a blast. You can go to thenewsolympian.com/live to get your tickets. The first act of the show will be the Newest Olympian. The second act of the show will be Potterless and Q&A. Johnny Frolickstein will be the guest. We're going to be covering chapters 35 and 36, which is slightly different than what I had posted on Instagram. I made a mistake with that post. I said that the Baltimore show was 32 and 33, and then Richmond was going to be 34 and 35. I did some incorrect math. I apologize mainly to the people of Baltimore because I said we'd be covering chapters 32 and 33, and we covered chapters 33 and 34. So oopsie, Baltimore, my bad. But Richmond, we're going to be covering chapters 35 and 36. And from what I understand is about to happen in those chapters, because I've just recently finished chapter 34, they're going to be spicy. So head on over and get your tickets at thenewsolympian.com/live. That is also where you can get tickets to all of our shows coming up in the near future, such as our show in Houston, Texas on March 9th, and then our whole big run of Midwest shows that we've got coming in April, where every show is going to be different, so you can attend multiple, and you can also attend the show even if you don't live near the Midwestern United States, or you're not going to travel, because we're going to stream one of the shows. So stay tuned for a post about that. I'm working on getting a stream set up for one of those shows. You can get tickets, and if you're a patron, you'll get discounted tickets, as you always do. So that is all on the horizon in terms of live shows. Now, something about this episode in particular, Niharika and I mention a podcast recording that we did for a project she was working on, and at the end of the episode, I'll ask if she has anything to plug, and she said no, but in between recording and posting, she actually put up her podcast to where you can listen to it, at least on Spotify. So if you search for it, it's called Fully Booked. The artist name listed is Niharika, so you should be able to find it if you want to hear us talk about the Percy Jackson series. Specifically, we talked about The Last Olympian, but we talked about the greater series as a whole as well. It was a really fun time. A programming note, reminder that we are going to be taking off for the week of March 3rd. March is a 5-Monday month, and I have not taken any sort of break this entire year, and the plan is to take 6 breaks during the course of the year, because that basically means every 60 days or so I get a break so I can work on other podcast things, honestly. But that's the plan. Won't have an episode. Might post a bonus thing, might not, but we will be back on March 10th to continue the coverage of the Son of Neptune. So you got an episode this week, next week, break off, and then we get back into it. And finally, just a reminder, I have been posting stuff to the Patreon. We recently put up a Patreon bonus episode, recently put up some director's commentary. I have been continuing to post videos from the live shows, so you get early access to hearing what we talked about in upcoming episodes of the Newest Olympian. So that all lives on the Patreon. I'm trying to continue to post more and more stuff. We just mailed out a bunch of the physical things, like the pins and the stickers that you get with certain tier support. So head on over to thenewsolympian.com to check out all those perks that you can get. And speaking of that Patreon, I want to give a shout out to the folks who have joined the Patreon most recently. So shout out to our newest Super God tier patron, Don't Worry, Be Rainbowy. Shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Supernova, Stephanie Chase, Nikki Jaja, or Nikki Haha, it's Jaja, and Lava Flex. And shout out to Nico's Black Vespa, who upgraded to the Ultra God tier status, meaning I will be saying their name in the ending credits of every single episode. Thank you all so much for your support. May Demeter bless you that if you are getting out some sort of dip to go along with food, you scoop out just the right amount. If you're doing doing hummus with veggies, you don't put too much, you don't put too little. You get just the right amount of stuff to match the things that you're scooping the dip with. If you are all caught up on the News Olympian and you are craving more content, you're in luck because I am creating content. One of the shows that I make that I think you would enjoy is a show called Meddling Adults. It is a podcast game show for charity where I host and guests compete to solve children's mysteries from classics like Scooby-Doo and Encyclopedia Brown, all for a good cause. Whoever gets the most correct earns money for a charity of their choosing. We have 4 seasons that are already up. I'm currently working on season 5 with Sherry right now, and it's a blast. It's a super fun time. You can play along at home. We have some lovely guests, and you get to hear some wild stories, and it's a wonderful show to listen to. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think it's very good, and you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Meddling Adults or by going to our website, meddlingadults.com. Now, unless you're listening on Patreon where you get access to ad-free episodes, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be read by me, such as by our 2025 sponsor, Pretty Litter, but some of the ads won't be read by me, and the ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Ireland, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in Irish or English with an Irish accent, I guess. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back into this episode of The Newest Olympian. All right, and we're back. We're here with chapter 26, which is also called Percy, but we will, of course, retitle it. So it opens with, quote, "It wasn't as hard as they thought. The screaming and the weed whacker helped. And at first, my thought was, why would they use a weed whacker? And then I realized, oh, Phineas has the weed whacker." Now, narrator Percy says, quote, "They brought lightweight Polartech jackets with a capital P. They brought these jackets to protect from the rain and the cold." And I thought, Polartech, is this a brand? And then I looked, and Polartech is a fleece type material that some brands use in their jackets. So REI and Patagonia will use Polartech. So it's kind of like Gore-Tex, that waterproof material that'll sometimes be on jackets or boots. So it is a brand name, but it's not like you get Polartech clothes from the Polartech store. Yeah. You would get something from Columbia Athletics and it would say with Polartech technology and have like a trademark or a registered or whatever on it. Now, Percy brought most things from the boat so that he didn't have the situation before where he said, go back to the boat and leave his friends behind. So he's got that. And it does include the macrobiotic jerky, quote, in case he needed to threaten any more killer whales. And I love that they keep making fun of the macrobiotic jerky. I wonder if there's more to come for it, like if it will actually be useful in thwarting a monster. It could go either way at this point. We could just be making callbacks to the past and it's done, or this could be Chekhov's macrobiotic jerky where it will save the day later in the story, and that would also be hilarious.
I do not know.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Fantastic.
I didn't even know that jerky was a thing.
You're unfamiliar with jerky?
I have heard of beef jerky, but it is a foreign concept to me. I do not know what it is.
It is not great.
Oh, okay.
Unless you get like proper beef jerky. So it's like a dried, cured meat. It is a good snack if you're going hiking or camping or something and you need to just get like protein and it doesn't take up a lot of room. But unfortunately, beef jerky, at least in America, I don't know if more commonly, but it's also developed into like things like Slim Jims, which are just like strange meat-esque tubes that are technically beef jerky, but like one of those things where like the packaging might not legally be allowed to call it beef. So if you get like actual like strips of meat, it's good. And then they also make like salmon jerky and vegetable jerky and like jerky out of things that aren't meat if you're vegetarian or anything else like that. I used to eat beef jerky a good amount when I was an engineer at the plant, like when I worked at like a air separation unit plant and I needed snacks because I was bored and I fought boredom with food. It was good to like have it in the desk. So it's good if you need to like fill up, get protein and not take up a lot of room. It's fine, but it's not like a fine delicacy, but it's popular amongst, people go like hunting and stuff. So they go down Gilson Street, which feels like a street I would know if I was more familiar with Portland. I don't know if this is like a famous street in Portland or just like a random street in Portland.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. Resident Norwegian. Can you tell me about this street in Portland, if it's obscure or if it's not obscure? Now, they go down Gilson Street and they hear someone screaming at chickens and revving an engine. So the group figures, all right, this is the dude we're looking for. So they follow the sounds and they arrive at a food truck park, which is incredibly Portland on brand. Like these are all over the city where they'll just be like a big plot of land with a ton of food trucks with a bunch of cool things. And even more on brand is that a lot of these places will be fusion. And Percy identifies that one of the places is a Brazilian-Korean fusion taco place, which narrator Percy describes as top secret radioactive cuisine, only if you mean that in a a good way, Percy, because Brazilian Korean fusion tacos sounds off the chain and I want to eat it so badly.
It does sound good, but I don't think he means it in a good way, because the last time I described food as radioactive, I was concerned.
Yeah.
I was like, why does it look radioactive? But also, I'm a picky eater.
Okay.
So I've never actually had Korean or Brazilian food, but I like Asian food.
Okay. I would highly recommend Korean food. It is so delicious. Brazilian food, pretty solid as well. I haven't had a ton of it, more so than just... I guess I've had like a fair amount. Like traditionally, there's like Brazilian steakhouses here, like fogo de chao, where they, like cut the meat at your table and stuff. Pão de queijo, I don't know if it's pronounced pão de queijo.
I don't know either.
Pão de queijo, but it's more spelled like pão de queijo, so I might be getting it wrong. So I haven't had a ton of Brazilian food. Like I don't know that I've like had like a proper Brazilian meal, but I have had it before. It's good. So for me, a fusion place, this feels like Brazilian steakhouse meat, but then maybe with like bulgogi sauce or kimchi. I can't recommend Korean food enough. It is so fantastic. And man, when I visited Korea, I was in heaven. I ate so much food. It was so good. So good. Now, it's not just this place that sounds awesome. There's also a place that does sushi on a stick, which is silly but a fun gimmick, and also deep fried ice cream sandwiches, which... That's intriguing to me because I do love an ice cream sandwich, and I know deep fried ice cream is a thing, but deep fried ice cream sandwiches.
Deep fried ice cream.
Okay, how is it? I have not had it.
Well, it was fried. I don't know about deep fried.
It was deep fried. I don't think it was pan fried ice cream.
Put it on a pan, flip it,
and then just pour it. It's just a hot chocolate now.
It was crispy. It was really trippy because I expect ice cream. I don't expect the crisp. Why is it crispy?
Yeah, on the inside, the texture on the inside, was it like crispy all the way through, or was it like...
From what I remember, the outside was kind of crispy and then the inside was a little more ice cream. It really tripped me because my aunt was like, you have to eat all of it together. You can't just eat a little small bite. And I was like, okay. So then I took a spoon and I scooped it, and I was slightly concerned about what I was putting in my mouth.
Yeah, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't good for you. But you're 15, you can do whatever.
Exactly.
You can eat
it doesn't matter.
You can eat a whole thing of Sour Patch Kids and be like, great, let's go run a mile.
Yep. I gained no weight.
Yeah.
I'm all good.
Now, the tempting food is all around. Percy's already hungry, so seeing these places makes him even hungrier. And then they see the screaming guy, and he's not fending off chickens, but harpies, which are described in the book series as being chicken-esque, so it makes sense. And then Percy describes Phineas as being old, bald, and wearing a bathrobe. And despite his blindness causing his strikes to miss by great distances, he's actually doing a pretty decent job of keeping the harpies at bay. The harpies look emaciated, though, which Percy finds interesting. He has this instinctual feeling that they shouldn't look so skinny, and he then begins to feel bad for them because they seem underfed. They seem desperate, not evil. Phineas then clips one, causing it to lose some feathers and flee, and then there's a younger-looking one with red wings that flies higher than the rest, kind of waiting for the optimal moment, and then it dives in and grabs a burrito, but right after, Phineas bonks her with the weed whacker, so then she flies off, and Percy finally, at this instance, yells for Phineas to stop it. But unfortunately, he just says, stop it, and the harpies are the ones that stop and scatter. So Phineas yells in triumph and thanks Percy and his friends. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, we're getting the vibe that we might not like this guy, or we're not supposed to like this guy, but you do need him. So I just wrote in my notes, good, you need him.
Yes.
And then Percy immediately, as the narrator, says that he bites back his anger and what he actually wants to say because they need information from him. So me and Percy Jackson on the same page.
On the same level, constantly.
So Percy responds, whatever, which is a classic Percy sort of response, and then he introduces himself. Phineas immediately knows that they are demigods because of their smell. Hazel is upset at the notion that they smell that badly, but Phineas says, it's not that. Instead, it's just that my senses are very heightened because I don't have my eyesight anymore. So he introduces himself and he pokes Percy in the eyes when he's reaching for his face. And he identifies Percy as a fellow son of Neptune because he can also smell the ocean on him. So fun way for us to learn this dude's also a son of Neptune.
You skipped the best part.
Oh, what's the best part?
The best part is, in my opinion, I don't know if it's Percy or Hazel, but one of them goes, do we smell bad? And I was like, we finally received the answer to the monsters smelling demigods thing. Because they're like, oh, they can smell them. Do they smell bad? Do they smell good? Do they smell so good that you want to go to a...
Oh,
What
I see what you're
is
saying.
what's
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So the smell is there, but your question is it a good smell or a bad smell? Are you
And now we
smelling?
know, I feel like.
Well, I mean,
They just smell demigod.
right. Yeah, he still didn't answer. He just said it was a distinct smell that he knows.
But you know what?
So
That's
the
something.
jury's still out.
That's something, though.
Yeah.
It's more of an answer than before.
Right. He at least didn't say you smell awful. He just said you
Yes.
smell like demigods. So maybe it is. I've had this recently where I just got for the first time like a proper like wool sweater, like one of those like fisherman cable knit sweaters.
Yeah.
And it had this smell to it where I thought it had like a factory preserve because I got it from like an online store. Like I thought it was that smell to it. And then Kelly was like, no. It just like smells like wool. Like it just smells like a sheep.
You can't describe it, but that's how it is.
Right. And I've never smelled a sheep before. I asked Kelly, I was like, do you think this smells bad? She's like, I don't know. I can't describe it as good or bad. It just smells like
Sheep.
wool to me. Like, so maybe it's in that regard where it's like, you know what it smells like, but you have a hard time because like it does smell, but like it's not bad, but like it does smell.
It's like I can smell it. I know what it is, but good or bad, I can't put it in a category. It's just a thing that exists in this world.
Yeah.
You just smell like demigods. What are you going to do about it?
You just smell like demigods. It is what it is. Now, Percy doesn't love the idea of being related to this guy. He hopes that all sons of Neptune don't share the same fate of, quote, first you start carrying a man satchel. Next thing you know, you're running around in a bathrobe and pink bunny slippers, chasing chickens with a weed whacker. Percy is not taking this bag well. He's really not taking this well.
He is like 16. Like, I don't expect that much, to be fair.
I get it. He's a 16-year-old in 2011. This is before NBA players started bringing, European carryalls to the games. Like these types of bags are becoming cooler now.
Like because like here in Norway, I see a lot of guys with, I wouldn't call them duffel bags, but they're kind of like duffel bags, but they're smaller and they're kind of round.
It's like this, but leather.
Yeah.
I'm holding up a bag that I have here, and like fanny packs had a phase. I don't know if they're still cool, but like
I haven't seen any.
Dudes having bags is definitely less of a thing. I'm more of a backpack guy because I just like to be able to carry it, walk around with it, whatever. But like, yeah, it seems like other types of bags are just becoming like, yeah, it's just a bag, whatever, which is good. So the other thing, though, that Percy's quote made me think of, because he goes, first you start carrying a man satchel, next thing you know, it made me think of the scene in Toy Story when Buzz is dressed up as Mrs. Nesbit and he's doing the tea thing and he's like, one day you're flying around the whole galaxy and the next you're sucking down Darjeeling with Mary Antoinette and her little sister. So just made me think clearly of that.
That's very good. I haven't seen Toy Story in a while.
There are certain lines from Toy Story 1 that I quote all the time. That is one of them. And another one is when Woody has the magic 8 ball and it says, don't count on it. He goes, don't count on it. Like those are the two that I say all the time. Anyway, Percy Jackson, Phineas is able to identify Hazel and Frank based off of their smells, and he gives them little intros. So his sense of smell is very good.
Too good.
He says that Hazel has the smell of gold and deep earth. And he says that Frank is a son of Mars, but there's more to his story. So then Frank mutters, oh yeah, ancient blood, Prince of Pylos, yada, yada, yada. But then Phineas replies, Periclymenus? Exactly. Oh, he was a nice fellow. I loved the Argonauts. So, huge revelation. Obviously, got to talk to Dr. Moy about this, but we finally have a name drop. We're learning more about Frank's blood. This is wild. Frank also thinks it's wild. His jaw drops and he asks, Perry who? And then Phineas smirks. And he says that he knows the Zhang family story, and he assures Frank that his great-grandpa didn't really destroy the camp, and then asks if the three of them are hungry. So yeah, I would guess the Prince of Pylos' name is Periclymenus, and then he's also saying, oh, and also, your great-grandfather didn't really destroy the camp like you've been told.
There's only one way to find out, and that's Google. So
No.
Okay.
The trapdoor. We got to keep the trapdoor intact. I don't want any reveals.
I just wanted the
Let's
name,
just leave
bro.
it as it is.
It's okay. But I feel like Perry who, it's very typical humor that I hear even now and that I do. You say half the thing and then you're like, what? What are you on about?
It's a big Percy Jackson thing. It did also make me think instantly of one of the times Mr. D got Percy's name wrong. He called him Perry Johansson. So that immediately came to mind when he said that. Phineas then asks if the three of them are hungry, and I'm thinking Percy's got to say yes, he's so hungry. Frank is dumbfounded. Phineas is already making moves towards food, and Percy then cuts to the Annabeth chase and says, we need information, and Phineas knows that their plan is to help him with the harpy situation in exchange for the info. He says The harpy issue, though, is under control. And he slaps his belly, which narrator Percy cites is the size of an overinflated basketball. If you overinflate a basketball, it doesn't get that much bigger than an actual basketball. Like, it just ends up bouncing too high. Like, it doesn't usually expand too much. So I love the basketball reference. However, I don't know that it's the best analogy for Rick to make here.
I've never seen an overinflated basketball. I don't think I've seen a properly fully inflated basketball, to be fair. So I cannot be the judge of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that is going to necessarily be the most popular sport in Norway.
A lot of people do handball here, which is kind of like random.
Oh, handball's cool.
Handball, skiing, obviously.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Norwegians are born with skis on their feet. Everyone knows this as a fact. But basketball is not that big of a sport. But there are people who, like a decent amount of people who play basketball. Mm-hmm. Like I know people who coach and stuff like that as well.
I did Google Norwegian NBA players, and there have only been 2 in all of history. There was Torgeir Breen, who played for the Clippers in 1964, and then Milt Palacio, who actually had a legitimate career, played 470 games for 6 different teams, and didn't put up super big numbers, but like made a career for himself.
Go Norway.
Good for him.
Go Norwegian basketball players.
Yeah, he was 6'3".
Damn.
Look at him go. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Phineas says that times have changed. When he was first given the gift of foresight, Jupiter cursed him by sending the harpies to eat his food. Phineas admits that he was too loquacious, sharing too many things that the gods wanted to keep secret. Then he goes, quote, "For instance, you're supposed to be dead," pointing to Hazel, "and you," pointing to Frank, "your life depends on a burned stick." So, he continues this trend. Percy asks, "What the heck are you talking about?" Hazel is shocked. Frank, who before was described as looking like he got run over by a truck, now Percy describes it as looking as if the truck backed up and ran over him a second time. Phineas then turns to Percy and says that Percy doesn't even know who he is. He says that he could tell him, but that would be no fun. He then gives a plot twist from some story that I've never heard of, followed by the Darth Vader plot twist in Star Wars. And then he's about to say who will win the next Super Bowl, but then Frank cuts him off. It's like, Frank, you could have made so much money. What are you doing? Come on, dude. Let him say it. Let him say it. I get that they didn't say it because it's a book and Rick doesn't want to timestamp it. But come on, man. Come on. So Hazel then grips her sword like she's about to pommel whip Phineas and asks why the gods stopped cursing him. And he corrects that they didn't stop cursing him. He says that he had to make a deal with the Argonauts, who also wanted information. So he told them that if they killed the harpies, he would give the information to them. The Argonauts drove the harpies away, but Iris would not let them kill them. So he begins to say that his patron brought him back to life, and that makes Frank ask, and me as well, your patron? So now we know for sure Phineas is evil. The key phrase you never want to hear someone say in this set of books. Phineas immediately answers that his patron is Gia, and he then asks Frank, "Who do you think opened the doors of death?" And then he says, quote, "Your girlfriend here understands. Isn't Gia your patron too?" And Hazel begins to push back on being Frank's girlfriend. Then she begins to push back on understanding. Then she fully pushes back on Gia not being her patron. And Phineas has a snarky grin, and he rambles a bit about Gia being the winning side and him choosing it. And then he explains that he's alive again, and all he needs to do is drop a couple prophecies here and there, and he gets what he has always wanted, the ability to eat all day while the harpies watch and starve.
To be fair, I was reading this, and it's like the difference between this and the Lost Hero is throughout the whole Lost Hero, everyone's like, "Our patron," and then just the patron doesn't say a name, and Phineas is like, "Oh yeah, Gia, by the way."
It's immediate. It's so quick, the reveal. I was shocked.
Thank God. But then also, is Hazel's patron Gia?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but is it her fault? Like, she was brought back, but like, I don't think Hazel's obviously not in cahoots with her, but yeah, it does present an interesting sort of wrinkle. At this point, I was realizing, okay, yeah, I shouldn't be surprised that he's evil. We just got off a chapter where we had nice people, and ideally the person in Seattle will also be helpful. So we can't have like 3 sets of locations in a row with helpful people. So this makes sense. Phineas explains that the harpies are the ones that are cursed now because they can only eat food from his table and they cannot leave Portland. And since the doors are open, they cannot even die. So he thinks it's magnificent. Frank thinks that this treatment of living creatures is horrible. Phineas says that they're monsters and he's not being mean to them because they tormented him for years. Percy comes to their defense, saying that it was their job to do so. They were ordered by Jupiter to attack Phineas. And Phineas clarifies, "Oh, I'm also upset with Jupiter." And then he explains that that is part of the reason why he's teamed up with Gia. She wants to punish the gods, and he says, in the meantime, He's going to enjoy being in Portland as the mortals take no notice of him because they think he's just some wacky old man yelling at pigeons. And I was like, oh, not pigeons, not pigeons, my beloved birds.
We're a pro-pigeon podcast.
So pro-pigeon.
We love the pigeons.
So I'm very anti-Phineas even more so.
He's just creepy. Like, he just is creepy.
He's super creepy.
He's really scary.
Mm-hmm. Hazel then calls Phineas awful and says that he belongs in the fields of punishment. Phineas then has a fantastic reply, quote, one dead person to another, girly? I wouldn't be talking. You started this whole thing. If it weren't for you, Alcyonius wouldn't be alive. And like, yeah, but like, not really. She didn't know what was going on. Like, you can't like fully blame her. So
it's a guilt trip.
Yeah, I hope this all gets resolved between Hazel and Frank. I hope that they don't get the wrong idea, but like, he's definitely doing an unfaithful retelling of what actually went down.
Definitely.
Hazel then staggers backwards. Frank asks Hazel what Phineas is talking about, and Phineas interjects to say that Frank will find out soon enough, quote, and then we'll see if you're still sweet on your girlfriend. So Phineas then changes the subject to Thanatos' whereabouts because he knows that that's why they're here. He says that he'll tell them, but they got to do him a favor. Hazel tells him to kick rocks because he's working for the enemy. Hazel then threatens to kill him, and Percy is tempted to let her. He's even tempted to do it himself.
Please.
Yeah.
I beg you.
But then he thinks about how saving Camp Jupiter and his friends there is more important, so he grits his teeth and asks, what's the favor? So Phineas says that there is one harpy who's quicker than the rest, and Percy goes, oh yeah, the red one? And that was pretty clear that she was going to be important if she's got a different color, she's flying differently.
Yeah.
But then, which I thought was really funny, Phineas goes, I'm blind, I don't know colors.
So good. Okay, you don't realize it.
Right? I never really considered it. And I do know there are listeners of TNO who are blind, and they've emailed me in the past because I asked, like, is saying blind to this like a bad phrase? I would love to hear someone who is blind, their perspective on color. Because, like, yeah, like, I guess you would know that things are red, but like, what would you, like, yeah, you know a strawberry is red, but you don't know like what red is. So I really would love to know. So please, blind listeners of the show, email thenewsolympian@gmail.com. I'm fascinated to know like what colors, what it's like. So then Phineas says that this harpy is the one that gives him the most trouble, and it's also given him some scars on his face and forehead, and he requests that they capture this harpy and bring her to him so that he can have her tied up and that he can keep an eye on her, quote, so to speak. So he's got the jokes coming. Now, the vibes weren't bad enough already. He adds, quote, harpies hate being tied up. It causes them extreme pain. Yes, I'll enjoy that. Maybe I'll even feed her so that she lasts longer. So pretty clear that we're not supposed to like this guy and we're pro harpies because this is deranged.
I wanted to kill him. I was like, sadist. Actual sadist.
Yeah. Rick does a very good job of making us hate people who we're supposed to hate quickly. He is wasting no time.
I was physically uncomfortable. This is like,
it's gross.
Like
it's super gross. So Percy looks to the other two, and then they have this silent agreement that they don't want to help this guy, but they do need his information. So formulating a backup plan is a necessity. Phineas picks up on this as well. He goes, all right, yeah, talk amongst yourselves and decide your course of action. But then he closes with saying, quote, just remember that without my help, your quest will fail, and everyone you love in the world will die. Now, off with you. Bring me a harpy. And that's the end of the chapter. Oh, man.
Cliffhanger.
Oh, man. Mm-hmm. And I forgot to retitle it. I was so engrossed that I didn't even come up with a retitle, so I got to do it on the spot here.
I didn't do it either.
Let's see. I want to say it's Percy. He was worried about yelling at pigeons. So like I see my future self yell at pigeons because he could see a world in which this happens to him. Do you have a retitling of chapter 26?
Maybe something about coming to the defense of pigeons?
Oh,
I don't have a fully formed title in my brain.
All good. All good. Well, this was so fun. Thank you so much, Niharika, for joining. I usually now ask people if people want to find you doing stuff, where can they find you doing stuff? Do you have anything to promote or shout out or anything?
I have nothing to promote. Shout out to my dad for pushing me to do this.
Yeah.
Both my parents. And thank you, school, for giving me this project.
Yeah.
To get me here.
Mm-hmm. The podcast project brought us to the guesting situation, and this has been so fun. And I love having a very different perspective, both, you know, geographically, age-wise. It's been a whole new checking of boxes on TNO guesting backgrounds. So it's been wonderful, and this was a delight, and I appreciate you taking the time. So thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, no problem. Thank you for joining. Listeners, thank you for listening, and until next time, when we figure out how this harpy hunt goes, until then, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamontes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the podcast and you just can't get enough, there's a couple of different things you can do. First, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You can join the Patreon and you can get access to a whole bunch of fun bonus content. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And there's also the TNO Discord, which you get access to by joining any TNO tier on the Patreon. You can learn all about the show at thenewestolympian.com, and you can get some sweet TNO merch at thenewestolympian.com/merch. I've mentioned the Patreon, so let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, the Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Sabrina Balsiger, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkoff, Rika, Ryla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Grace, Ginger Spurs Boy, A Cup of Solace, Bradimus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Bella, Percy Jackson, Son, Han, Haley Hingleheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Jessica Phillips, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kit Kat Crumbs, Andrea Not Andrea, and Jordan Ray. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, just tell someone about the podcast. It really does help a lot, whether that is you reaching out to someone directly who you think might enjoy the podcast. Maybe they're a big Percy Jackson fan, maybe they've been looking for an excuse to read the books, or if you post about the show on social media, or you leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. Truly, all of these things help. I really appreciate anyone who has done it in the past, and I also appreciate anyone who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, where we will be joined by Robert from the Damn Meme Page to cover chapters 27 and 28 of The Son of Neptune. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mix. So currently here in the studio, I have a legal pad for note-taking purposes, and I'll do a couple of things to make noises with it. Here's me tapping my fingers on the back of it, on the little cardboard portion. Here's me kind of thumbing through the pages. Oh, nope, that's it, like completely unfolding. Here's me like thumbing through the pages. And then here's me just pretending to write, but using my finger as a pen on one of the actual lines. I wrote, "Thank you so much for listening."